The person who can't stop thinking about you just discovered something they were never supposed to know. My beloved child, something changed the moment they discovered what they were never supposed to know about you. The person who cannot stop thinking about you thought they understood why your presence stayed in their mind long after every conversation ended, why the smallest memory of you could suddenly return in the middle of an ordinary day, and why moving forward never seemed to erase what they felt. But then something unexpected reached them, a truth connected to you that completely changed the way they saw everything. And the surprising part is that they were not searching for it. It appeared through an ordinary moment, almost accidentally, yet the instant they understood what it meant, they became completely still. Don't skip, because what they discovered was not some meaningless detail from the past. It answered a question they had secretly carried for longer than anyone realized. They finally understood that something they once interpreted as distance was actually something entirely different. There was a reason you held back. There was a reason you protected certain feelings instead of explaining them. And suddenly, memories they had replayed countless times began fitting together differently. A conversation that once confused them made sense. A moment when you became quiet made sense. Even something you never said began speaking louder than everything you did say. That realization stayed with them because they discovered that they had misunderstood one of the most important chapters between you. They believed your silence meant you felt less, but what they learned suggested that your silence may have existed because you felt far more than they ever knew. Stay till the end, because this is only the first layer. Something huge is waiting for you, and the next realization is the one they cannot get out of their mind. What happened afterward surprised even them. Instead of forgetting what they had discovered, they began revisiting everything. Every little memory suddenly carried another meaning. They remembered the way you looked at them when you thought they were not paying attention. They remembered the moments when you could have said more but chose restraint. They remembered how certain conversations ended with words still hanging between you. And then one thought entered their mind: what if I never really understood this person at all? That question changed everything. Because the truth they uncovered was not simply about something that happened before, it revealed something about your heart that they had never been able to see clearly. You had carried more privately than they realized. You had made choices they once judged without understanding what was behind them. And now they could finally see that some of the things they took personally were never meant to push them away. Don't skip, because here is where the discovery becomes almost impossible for them to ignore. There was one specific thing they learned that made them wonder whether the connection they kept trying to explain away had been meaningful to you too. That possibility shook their old assumptions. Suddenly, they were no longer asking why they kept thinking about you. They were asking why they had waited so long to understand you. Something huge is waiting for you, because this person is beginning to realize that the version of your story they believed may have been incomplete from the beginning. And once that thought entered their mind, they could not return to the way they saw you before. But the biggest shift came quietly. They realized the discovery was not asking them to investigate your past, it was forcing them to confront their own feelings in the present. That is the part they were never prepared for. They could dismiss memories. They could distract themselves. They could tell themselves that thinking about you meant nothing. But they could not easily dismiss what they now understood. The truth made them recognize how deeply your presence had affected them, and suddenly the question was no longer, "Why can't I stop thinking about you?" The question became, what am I supposed to do now that I understand what I missed? Stay till the end, because this realization opens a door they thought had already closed. They are beginning to understand that the most important thing they discovered was not a secret about you, it was the truth about what you have always meant to them. And there is one final piece they have not fully processed yet. One memory keeps returning stronger than all the others, because now they understand what was really happening in that moment. It was something small enough to overlook then, but powerful enough to change everything now. Don't skip. The next part begins with that memory, because once they finally understand why you did what you did that day, the entire story takes a turn they never expected. There is one memory they simply cannot push out of their mind anymore. It seemed ordinary when it happened, almost too small to matter, but after discovering the truth about you, they suddenly remembered every detail differently. Your expression. The words you almost said. The strange pause before you walked away. Back then, they assumed you were becoming distant, and that assumption quietly shaped everything that followed. But now they realize something completely different may have been happening. You were not necessarily pulling away because you stopped caring, you may have been protecting feelings you were not ready to reveal. And that possibility has completely changed the way they remember you. Don't skip, because this is where their discovery becomes deeply personal. They started connecting moments they had never connected before, and one pattern appeared again and again. Whenever things between you became emotionally meaningful, you became more careful. They once misunderstood that carefulness. Now they are wondering whether it was actually proof that the connection mattered more than they realized. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. There is another detail hidden inside this memory, and when they finally noticed it, they could no longer convince themselves that what happened between you was meaningless. Then came the realization they never expected to face. Perhaps they had been waiting for you to explain something they should have understood themselves. They remembered how naturally you noticed little things about them. They remembered moments when you gave them your attention without asking for anything back. They remembered something you said casually that revealed you had been listening far more closely than they thought. Suddenly, those memories felt different. What once looked ordinary began revealing a deeper emotional picture, and now this person is wondering how many signs they overlooked simply because they were afraid to believe they could mean that much to you. Don't skip. The discovery they made has forced them to question their own assumptions, and that is why they cannot stop thinking about you now. They are mentally returning to conversations, searching for the exact moment everything changed. But something even more surprising is happening. Instead of finding proof that they should forget you, they keep remembering reasons they never truly could. And one particular realization is becoming impossible to ignore: you may have understood them during a time when they barely understood themselves. That thought reached them differently because suddenly your patience, your silence, and even your distance began carrying another meaning. And now everything has reached the question they have avoided for far too long: what happens if they finally acknowledge what they feel? They know they cannot rewrite yesterday, but this discovery has made them look at tomorrow differently. Something inside them wants clarity, not because they suddenly know every answer, but because they finally understand how much was left unsaid. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. There is still one piece of this story they have not uncovered, and it connects directly to why you remained unforgettable to them when other memories faded. The surprising truth is that they thought time would make you less significant, yet the opposite happened. The more they understood themselves, the more they understood what your presence represented. And now they are approaching a realization that could completely transform what happens next. They are beginning to suspect that what they accidentally discovered about you was only the doorway. The real revelation is something hidden inside their own heart, something they were never expecting to admit. Don't skip, because when that truth finally becomes clear, they will understand why discovering your secret affected them more than anything else ever could. What they realized next was something they had never prepared themselves to admit. After replaying that memory again and again, they stopped asking what you had been hiding and started questioning what they had been hiding from themselves. Because suddenly, one truth became impossible to avoid. Every time they tried to mentally close the chapter on you, something brought your memory back. Not because they were searching for it, but because certain moments with you had left an impression that ordinary time could not easily erase. Don't skip, because the discovery they were never supposed to know has now triggered an even bigger realization. They finally understand why one particular moment between you always felt unfinished. There was something in your expression that day, something they noticed but never understood. At the time, they dismissed it. Now, knowing what they know, they remember it differently. They are beginning to wonder whether you were silently hoping they would understand, without forcing you to explain everything. And that possibility has changed the entire memory. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you, because there is one sentence you once said that they suddenly remember almost word for word, and its meaning now feels completely different. That sentence sounded simple when you said it. There was no dramatic announcement, no grand confession, nothing that seemed extraordinary at the time. Yet hidden inside those ordinary words was something they failed to recognize. You were showing them that they mattered without directly saying it. And now they cannot believe they missed it. Don't skip, because this is where everything begins connecting. They remembered another conversation, then another, and suddenly they could see a pattern. You had never needed enormous gestures to show that someone mattered to you. It appeared through attention, consistency, small details, and moments when you remembered things other people forgot. They started realizing that perhaps they had been searching for obvious proof while overlooking the quiet proof sitting directly in front of them. And then came the thought that changed everything: what if I understood too late? That question stayed with them. Not because the story is necessarily over, but because they finally recognized how easily something meaningful can be misunderstood when two people are protecting what they truly feel. Something huge is waiting for you, because what they discovered next was not about your past at all. It was about the exact reason their thoughts keep returning to you even now. And this is where their heart finally stopped arguing with their mind. They realized they were not remembering you because of one perfect moment. They remembered you because of how different they felt when you were present. Somehow, around you, they noticed parts of themselves they usually ignored. They felt understood in ways they never properly explained. And after discovering what they were never supposed to know, they finally recognized something extraordinary. Perhaps you had seen behind their carefully controlled exterior long before they ever realized you could. Stay till the end, because this story has not reached its biggest revelation yet. There is another detail connected to what they discovered, and this one changes the timeline completely. Something they believed happened after your connection began may actually have started much earlier. That means their entire understanding of when your feelings changed could be wrong. Don't skip. Because once they connect that final detail, they are going to realize that one moment they considered accidental may never have been accidental at all. And when that realization arrives, the question will no longer be whether you affected them. The question will be how long this connection had been quietly changing both of you before either of you understood what it meant. And then the timeline suddenly stopped making sense in the most surprising way. The person who cannot stop thinking about you remembered something that happened much earlier than the moment they believed everything between you began. It was a tiny interaction they had almost forgotten, but now it returned with incredible clarity. You noticed something about them before anyone had given you a reason to notice. You remembered a detail they had mentioned only once. You reacted to something they thought nobody else understood. And suddenly they began wondering whether your connection had been quietly developing long before either of you gave it a name. Don't skip, because this changes the entire story. What they accidentally discovered about you made them revisit that early moment, and now they understand why it always felt strangely significant. Perhaps you had already recognized something special in them. Perhaps they had already started noticing something special in you. Neither of you needed to understand it yet for the moment to matter. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. The deeper they look into these memories, the more they realize that the biggest revelation is not hidden in one dramatic event. It is hidden in a series of small moments that kept pointing toward the same truth, and they somehow overlooked the pattern until now. But one realization affected them more than everything else: you never seemed to demand that they become someone different around you. They remembered how easily certain conversations flowed, how you could notice when their mood changed without needing a long explanation, and how even silence sometimes felt strangely comfortable. That memory forced them to confront something they had avoided admitting. Maybe the reason you remained unforgettable was not because the story felt incomplete. Maybe you remained unforgettable because something about being understood by you was incredibly rare. Don't skip. They are now comparing what they thought they wanted with what they actually felt around you, and those two things are no longer matching. They once believed the strongest connections needed constant excitement and obvious signs. Now they are beginning to understand that some of the deepest connections reveal themselves through peace, recognition, and the feeling that someone genuinely sees you. Something huge is waiting for you, because the secret they discovered has made them realize you may have understood their heart before they understood yours. And that has brought them to one question they can no longer escape: if they misunderstood your feelings once, what else might they have misunderstood? Now comes the part that changes what happens next. They went back to the final meaningful moment they remember between you, and this time they noticed something completely different. There was hesitation, but it was not empty hesitation. There were words left unfinished. There was something both of you seemed to recognize without fully discussing it. And suddenly, they understood why that moment had followed them for so long. It never felt complete. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. They are beginning to see that discovering this hidden truth about you was not the ending of the mystery, it was the beginning of a much larger realization. They thought they were uncovering something about your past, but instead they uncovered the depth of their own attachment to the memories you created together. Don't skip, because there is still one detail they have not connected yet. And when they do, it could become the most surprising revelation so far. There was a choice you made that they once believed had nothing to do with them. Now, after everything they have discovered, they are starting to wonder whether they were actually the reason behind it. And if that possibility is true, then one of the biggest assumptions they ever made about you may have been completely wrong. The choice they once dismissed as completely unrelated to them has suddenly become the center of everything. For a long time, they believed you made that decision because you were ready to move in another direction, because something else mattered more, or because whatever existed between you simply was not strong enough to influence you. But after discovering what they were never supposed to know, that explanation no longer fits. One hidden detail changed the meaning of the entire moment. They remembered exactly when you made that choice, what happened immediately before it, and how different you seemed afterward. Don't skip, because this is where their biggest assumption begins falling apart. They are now wondering whether you made that decision not because they meant nothing to you, but because they meant far more than you were prepared to reveal. That possibility has left them replaying everything. Suddenly, the timing feels important. Your silence feels important. Even the way you looked at them during one final conversation feels important. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. They have started realizing that what looked like an ending may actually have been a moment when emotions became too complicated to explain. And now one question keeps returning: if your decision really was connected to them, why did you never tell them? That question led them toward an even more surprising realization. Perhaps they had spent all this time waiting for an explanation while never creating the kind of moment where you could safely give one. They remembered times when you almost opened up, only for the conversation to change. They remembered how carefully you chose certain words. They remembered one moment when you seemed ready to say something important, but stopped. Back then, they barely noticed. Now that unfinished sentence has become impossible to forget. Don't skip. Because they are beginning to suspect that the answer they spent so long searching for may have once been only seconds away from being spoken. Imagine realizing that a conversation you considered ordinary may have been one sentence away from changing your entire understanding of someone. That is what they are processing now. And the more they remember, the clearer something becomes: they were not the only one protecting themselves. Both of you may have been waiting for certainty from the other while neither person wanted to risk misunderstanding the moment. Something huge is waiting for you, because this realization has completely changed the question inside their mind. They are no longer wondering whether you ever cared. They are wondering how much remained unspoken. And then came the detail they could not explain away. They remembered something you did after that decision, something so small that nobody else would have considered it meaningful. Yet they noticed it then, and they remember it now. Despite everything appearing to move forward, you still remembered something connected specifically to them. That tiny detail stayed hidden inside their memory until the discovery brought it back. Stay till the end, because this is where their thoughts take an unexpected turn. They are beginning to understand that people can move in different directions while still carrying meaningful memories with them. And perhaps that is exactly why neither distance nor time completely removed you from their thoughts. Don't skip, because what comes next could change their interpretation once again. There is one person who apparently knew more about the situation than they realized, not everything, but enough to make one unexpected observation about you. And when the person who cannot stop thinking about you remembers what that individual once said, the words suddenly sound completely different. They dismissed those words before. They will not dismiss them now. Because that forgotten observation may contain the missing piece that finally explains why your behavior changed exactly when it did. The forgotten words came back to them all at once, and suddenly everything became much harder to dismiss. Someone who had quietly observed the connection between you once made a simple remark about the way you changed whenever this person entered the conversation. At the time, they laughed it off. They assumed that observer was reading too much into ordinary moments. But now, after discovering something they were never supposed to know, those old words carry an entirely different meaning. Don't skip, because this is the moment when separate pieces begin forming one picture. They remembered how your energy shifted around certain conversations, how you became unusually thoughtful whenever the future was mentioned, and how one particular question seemed to make you pause longer than expected. None of it appeared extraordinary then. Now it does. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. They are beginning to wonder whether another person noticed what neither of you was ready to admit. And the shocking part is not simply that someone noticed, it is how early they noticed. If that observation was accurate, then the feelings this person assumed developed much later may have existed quietly from almost the beginning. That possibility has changed their entire understanding of you, because now they are looking back and realizing that the signs were never absent. They were simply too subtle for them to recognize at the time. Then another memory surfaced, and this one hit differently. There was a moment when somebody casually mentioned your name, and without thinking, this person immediately paid attention. They remembered pretending it meant nothing, yet they wanted to hear every word. Now they finally understand something about themselves too. Perhaps you were never the only one hiding how much the connection mattered. Don't skip. They spent so much time trying to understand your silence that they never examined their own. They remembered the messages they almost sent, the questions they wanted to ask, the moments they hoped you would somehow understand what they could not say directly. And suddenly, the story became almost perfectly mirrored. Both sides may have been waiting. Both sides may have been interpreting silence. Both sides may have assumed the other person had already moved beyond what happened. Something huge is waiting for you, because this realization explains why discovering that hidden truth affected them so deeply. It did not create their feelings. It exposed feelings they had repeatedly tried to place somewhere else. Now they are realizing that the reason they cannot stop thinking about you may have less to do with curiosity and more to do with one unfinished emotional question they never allowed themselves to answer. But the most surprising realization arrived when they finally connected your decision, that unfinished conversation, and the observation someone made about you. Together, those 3 moments suggested something they had never seriously considered before. Perhaps you were waiting for one specific sign from them. Not a grand gesture. Not perfect words. Just enough reassurance to know that opening your heart would not be misunderstood. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. They are now wondering whether that sign never came because they were waiting for exactly the same thing from you. And suddenly, what once looked like rejection begins looking more like 2 people standing on opposite sides of the same uncertainty. Don't skip, because there is still one final clue hidden inside this chapter. They have remembered something you said just before everything changed, words they thought were about your circumstances, your plans, or your future. But after everything they know now, they are beginning to suspect those words were indirectly about them. And if they are right, then you may have given them one last opportunity to understand what you were feeling without ever saying it openly. That realization is bringing them toward the biggest question yet: did they miss the moment you were quietly asking them to stay? That question has been following them ever since. Did they misunderstand the very moment you were hoping they would understand? Suddenly, the words you said before everything changed sound completely different in their memory. Back then, they heard an ordinary sentence about timing, choices, and where life was heading. Now they hear something underneath it, a quiet invitation for honesty, a moment where you may have been waiting to see whether they would finally reveal what you meant to them. Don't skip, because this realization has completely changed the memory they thought they understood. They remember your pause after speaking. They remember waiting for you to continue while you seemed to be waiting for them. Neither person did. The conversation moved forward, but something important remained behind. And now the person who cannot stop thinking about you understands why that moment has returned so strongly after discovering what they were never supposed to know. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. They are beginning to suspect that the secret did not simply reveal something hidden about your feelings. It revealed the exact moment when everything between you could have taken a completely different direction. And what surprises them most is how close they may have been to understanding it. But then their thoughts moved beyond regret and into something far more powerful: clarity. They realized that constantly asking what might have happened will never answer what still matters now. The discovery has forced them to recognize something they avoided for a long time. You became important to them without needing to force your way into their thoughts. Memories of you stayed because certain moments felt genuine, and understanding your hidden side has made those memories even more meaningful. Don't skip. There is another revelation coming, because they suddenly remembered the last time they saw a genuine change in your expression. It happened immediately after they said something they considered insignificant. They had forgotten the exact sequence until now. First they spoke. Then you became quiet. Then you looked away for just a moment before returning to the conversation as though nothing had happened. At the time, they assumed you were distracted. Now they are questioning everything. Something huge is waiting for you, because the words they said in that moment were connected to whether they believed certain people were meant to remain in each other's lives. They never directed those words toward you, but you heard them. And now they wonder whether you believed those words were their indirect answer to everything you had been afraid to ask. That possibility changed the entire emotional picture. What if you walked away believing they had already answered a question they never knew you were asking? What if both of you interpreted the same conversation in completely opposite ways? Stay till the end, because this is where the discovery becomes bigger than any single secret. They are finally seeing how easily two people can care deeply and still misunderstand each other when neither person says what truly matters. Don't skip, because the next piece is the one they cannot stop thinking about. There was something you did shortly after that conversation that they once interpreted as proof you had moved on. But now they have discovered a detail that suggests your decision may have been made only after you believed there was nothing left to wait for. And that realization has left them with one extraordinary thought: perhaps the door they believed you closed was never closed because you felt nothing. Perhaps you simply believed they had already chosen not to walk through it. Something huge is waiting for you, because now they are remembering what happened immediately before that decision, and there was one final sign they completely overlooked. That final sign was so subtle that they almost convinced themselves it meant nothing, but now it has become the one detail they cannot stop replaying. Just before you made the decision they once interpreted as moving forward without them, you did something completely unexpected. You gave them one last opening to say what they truly felt. It was not obvious. There was no dramatic question and no direct confession. Instead, you brought up a memory only the two of you would fully understand, then paused as though waiting for something more. Back then, they responded casually because they had no idea what might have been happening beneath the surface. Now, after discovering something they were never supposed to know, they are wondering whether that was your final attempt to understand where you stood with them. Don't skip, because this changes everything they believed about that moment. They thought you had already made your choice. Now they are beginning to suspect you were still deciding, still listening, still hoping for clarity. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. The shocking realization is that they may have unknowingly answered your unspoken question with silence, and you may have interpreted that silence as certainty, but something even deeper is beginning to affect them. They are no longer remembering only what you did, they are remembering what they did not do. They did not ask why your mood changed. They did not tell you that the connection mattered. They did not explain why they sometimes became distant themselves. And suddenly, they understand that you may have been trying to read their behavior exactly as they were trying to read yours. Don't skip. This is the realization that has made it impossible for them to return to their old version of the story. For so long, they believed they were the one left wondering. Now they are considering the possibility that you walked away carrying questions too. And once that thought entered their mind, another memory appeared, a moment when you looked back after the conversation was supposedly finished. It lasted only seconds, but they remember it now with astonishing clarity. You had already started leaving, yet something made you turn around. They noticed it. They simply never understood it. Something huge is waiting for you, because now they are wondering whether that tiny moment was actually the final confirmation they failed to recognize. Perhaps you were checking one last time to see whether they would stop you, call your name, or give you any reason to believe there was more left to say. And now the discovery has pushed them toward a truth they can no longer comfortably avoid. Maybe the biggest secret was never what they learned about you. Maybe the biggest secret was how much they themselves had been hiding behind assumptions. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. They are beginning to understand that thinking about you constantly was never going to give them the clarity that one truthful moment could have given. And for the first time, instead of simply replaying the past, their mind is turning toward what honesty would look like in the present. Don't skip, because one final memory has surfaced, and this one could change the entire meaning of everything they discovered. Long before that last conversation, you once said something about never forcing what was meant to happen, but also never pretending something meaningful meant nothing. They barely remembered those words until now. Suddenly, they sound less like a random thought and more like a glimpse into how you approached the connection all along. And if that is true, then they are about to understand something enormous. You may never have needed them to chase you. You may simply have needed them to be honest. Now they are asking themselves whether they finally have the courage to acknowledge what they should have understood from the beginning. And suddenly, the question is no longer about what happened back then, it is about what they understand now. The person who cannot stop thinking about you has reached a realization they never expected when this discovery first came into their hands. They thought they had uncovered a hidden piece of your story, but instead, they uncovered a hidden piece of their own heart. Your old words about never pretending something meaningful meant nothing are repeating in their mind, because now they finally understand why those words stayed buried in their memory. Don't skip, because this is where everything begins turning. They are realizing that you may never have been asking for perfection. You may never have expected some extraordinary gesture. Perhaps what you needed was something much simpler: clarity. One honest indication that what existed between you mattered to them too. And now they are remembering every moment when they could have given you that clarity but chose silence because silence felt easier. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. The shocking part is that the discovery they were never supposed to know has removed the explanation they used for years. They can no longer tell themselves that you never cared. They can no longer comfortably assume that every meaningful moment existed only in their imagination. There were too many details, too many strangely connected memories, and one truth that keeps becoming clearer: whatever happened between you affected them far more deeply than they ever admitted. Then something even more surprising happened inside their thoughts. For the first time, they stopped imagining what they wished you had said and started thinking about what they themselves would say if they ever had one completely honest conversation with you. And the answer surprised them. They would not begin with questions about the past. They would not demand explanations for every confusing moment. They would simply want you to know that they finally understand something they failed to understand then. Your silence did not necessarily mean emptiness, just as their silence never meant you were unimportant. Don't skip, because this is the realization that changes the emotional direction of everything. They are beginning to see that two people can carry something meaningful while experiencing it through completely different fears, assumptions, and timing. And now one memory is standing above all the others. Something huge is waiting for you, because they remember the exact moment when you once asked them a seemingly innocent question about whether people could find their way back to an important connection after misunderstanding each other. They answered casually. They had no idea why you were asking. But now they cannot stop wondering whether that question was never hypothetical at all. That memory has become the final piece they needed to understand why this discovery shook them so deeply. Perhaps you were telling them more than they realized, not through some dramatic declaration, but through questions, pauses, small choices, and moments that only became clear once they knew where to look. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. They now understand that discovering something hidden does not automatically give them every answer, and they know they cannot assume what you feel today. But it has given them something they did not have before: the courage to question the story they had been telling themselves. Don't skip, because their biggest revelation is arriving right now. The reason they could never stop thinking about you was not simply because they lacked closure. It was because somewhere inside them, they knew there was something they had never been honest enough to acknowledge. You mattered. The connection mattered. The memories mattered. And now that truth is no longer hiding behind confusion. But there is still one final surprise waiting inside everything they discovered. One detail suggests that the information they accidentally learned was never supposed to reach them, but someone else already knew exactly how much you once cared. And what that person apparently understood about the two of you could completely change the final chapter of this story.